Hello everyone, good day Philippines, this is A and welcome again to my channel. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to click the notification bell for you to be subscribed to new videos like this one. So my name is April Joy Sevilla and I am a Baylon student from Subramo University, and in this channel, I am making videos that would guide the college students, especially the first year, the freshmen. And finally guys, usa sa inyong mga request ang history and English language. So atuan na dyan na siyang madiscuss guys, no? So just stay tuned in my channel and I will be providing with you guys the public material. So let's go.
So to start off, let us discuss the history in English language. So this is a major subject that introduces the overview of the history of English language from its earliest known Indo-European ancestry through its most profound developments in the Old English, Middle English, and early modern English period. So this course consists of 5 units, and we will be starting with the first unit, which is the study or concept of language. This unit, or the unit 1, consists of 9 lessons. To start off, let's start language as system. So language is a system of rules and patterns that relate words to one another. It has 3 components: the phonology, lexis, and morphosyntax. Phonology means the meaningless components of a language or its sound system. On the other hand, lexis is the meaningful units or vocabulary. Moreover, morphosyntax is the study of system of the internal structure of words and the way in which words are put through together to form phrases and sentences. Additionally, there are 6 grammatical signals of a language, and these are parts of speech, affixes, concord, word order, function words, and prosodic signals. Moving on to lesson 2, language as signs. The things that you need to inculcate in this lesson is that language is a system that organizes signs to represent other things. The smallest linguistic sign is a morpheme, which is a sequence of sounds with a recognizable meaning. Morphemes can either be free or bound. For the lesson 3, which is language as vocal, we able to learn here that language can be expressed in the form of speech, writing, or gestures. Writing is more important than speech, and that gestures can be specialized to the extent that they themselves communicate. To differentiate, writing makes us civilized as it is more impermanent than speech. It is making possible to keep records that are necessary for any civilization, and it also enables us to make some distinctions that speech can make only with difficulty. On the contrary, gestures is another form of expressing speech that they vary in use and meaning from one culture to another. So when gestures accompany speech, they may be more or less conscious, as some specialized gestures need to not accompany speech. They themselves communicate. To continue lesson 4, language as conventional. So in this lesson, the thing that you need to inculcate is that language is conventional. It is because it can be represented in many different ways. There is usually no connection between the sounds we make and the phenomena of life. And sometimes we tend to judge other people's language as correct or incorrect, depending on the use of a particular words or grammar. It is important to know that the facts of language are not definite. Therefore, we prefer to talk about acceptability. That is, the degree to which users of a language will judge an expression as okay. Moving on to lesson 5, language as a means of human communication. So in this lesson, we able to comprehend that language can be analyzed as a means of communication. Language systems are open, as language can be replaced and it is not only utilitarian. Moreover, language is a system of rules of patterns that relate to words to one another. The language system organizes signs to represent other things. It can be expressed in the form of speech, writing, or gestures, and that is conventional. Next, we have the lesson 6, or the theories of language origin. So there are actually a lot of language origin theories, but these are the followings: divine source theory, bow wow theory, ding dong theory, Euheo theory, poo poo theory, the oral gesture source theory, and that are the examples are situations for each theory. Next, for lesson 7, the characteristics or features of a language. So there are also different features or characteristics of language. And these are as follows. First is that language is arbitrary. Language is social. Language is symbolic. Language is systematic. Language is vocal. Language is non-extinctive conventional. Language is productive and creative. Language is a system of communication. And language is human and structurally complex. And lastly, language is unique, complex, and modifiable, as it has its own creativity and productivity. For the lesson 8, the elements of communication, we all know that communication is a transmission of an idea or feeling so that the sender and the receiver shares the same understanding. Moreover, communication is not a mysterious process. It takes place when the ideas from your mind are transferred to another's and arrive intact, complete, and coherent. So the communication process involves understanding, sharing, and meaning, and it consists of 8 essential elements. And these are the source, the message, the channel, the receiver, the feedback, the environment, the context, and the interference. It is important also to highlight that the sender and receiver are not only good speakers, but also good listeners. So it is important to take note as what active listening is. So active listening is a process of recognizing, understanding, and accurately interpreting communicated messages and responding to spoken and or nonverbal messages. A communicator develops effective listening by inculcating its 5 elements. These are as follows: pay attention, show that you are listening, provide feedback, defer judgment, and respond appropriately. There are also tips on effective listening. First is you need to learn to like to listen. Second, ignore distractions. Third would be summarize what the speaker is saying. Fourth is tame your emotions. Fifth is eliminate hasty judgments. Sixth is never interrupt. 7, inspire openness in the speaker. 8, acknowledge the need to listen. And lastly, generate well-founded conclusions. For the last lesson of Unit 1, it is the functions of language. So the functions of language are referential function, poetic function, emotive function, conative function, pathic function, and metalingual function. And that wraps up our Unit 1, the study or concept of language discussion. Moving on to the Unit 2. The Unit 2 of the History of the English Language consists of 6 lessons. So for the first lesson, the prehistory, the highlight here is the importance of cognates. Cognates are words of common origin in different languages. These words often resemble each other, and differences that exist between languages tend to be systematic. Other than that, the study of cognates helps us to make qualified guesses about what words may have looked like in a proto-language. The 3 subgroups of the Common Germanic language are also emerged during the prehistory, and these are the East, North, and West Germanic. For the lesson 2, the primitive Old English, The highlight here is the British invasion. Celtic tribes conquered Britain in 500 BC and then disputedly ruled the island for about 500 years, except for Scotland where the Celtic Scots are survived. Britain was completely colonized and non-Indo-European Picts held the position of power. Roman legionaries evacuated Britain after the fall of the Roman Empire. The vulnerable Celts were powerless to stop the Picts and Scots from moving southward. In addition to pacifying the Scots, the three Germanic tribes of the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes also saw that due to the fruitful nature of the islands, the weak Celts were forced to the outer edges. By 600 AD, having won was finished and the birth of English and England followed. During the primitive Old English period, changes of the sound occurred as being seen as a kind of assimilation, whereby a front vowel towards the end of a word affects the vowel of preceding syllable, raising it in many cases. Final font vowels were later lost. For the lesson 3, the Old English. Old English can be defined as a highly syntactic language. This means that inflectional endings were used to signal the grammatical function of words, and word order was of less importance. Old English nouns, for example, had 2 numbers, 4 cases, 3 grammatical genders, and roughly 10 different patterns of declensions. The other languages that influenced Old English were Celtic, Latin, and Scandinavian. For Lesson 4, the Vikings and their influences. The first Viking attacks on England started around 800 AD and were at first merely plundering raids. But some 50 years later, these attacks had become more serious and groups had even started occurring in Britain. The resistance from the English was badly organized and often ineffective. The lack of unity in England made it a great deal easier for the Vikings to roam and raid countryside. The Vikings took control of large parts of England, and toward the end of the 9th century, their eyes turned in their axis. The strongest of the Saxon kingdoms not yet under Danish control. Here, their conquering of England came to an end when King Alfred and his followers put up resistance, eventually forcing the Viking troops to surrender in 878. Both Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings influenced English language. As a matter of fact, the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings were culturally quite similar. They spoke similar languages and had similar traditions, and it appears the Vikings soon started integrating with the Anglo-Saxons' Scandinavian vocabulary, penetrated also nearly every area of the English language, but most of Scandinavian origin in English are concrete everyday words. On to the Lesson 5, the Middle English. The historical event which influenced the Middle English was the Norman conquest in 1066, when the Duke of Normandy William the Conqueror defeated King Harold and became King of England, and this brought French into England. Norman French influences English vocabulary. By the 13th century, approximately 10,000 French words come to English. About 3/4 of these French loans are still in the language today. Some examples of words that were borrowed from French are allowance, apostrophe, bachelor, ballot, cadet, heritage, literature, musketeer, and a lot more. The Standard English emerged when the Normans progressively lost touch with their French heritage. At the end of the 14th century, the Anglo-Normans no longer had any hand left in France. The Normans decided to adopt English as their official language, and in 1362, Parliament was opened in English. Due to the location of this Parliament in Westminster, London, the London accent eventually became the most widely spoken, and due to London's significance as a seaport and commercial hub, as well as closest to the court in Westminster, hence, English standardization emerged in the Middle English. The last lesson, the Lesson 6, which is the Middle English period. The thing that happened here is the Great Vowel Shift, wherein it was a change in pronunciation that began around 1400s. During the next 2 centuries, there was a great influx of people into the London region, and different dialects began to affect the pronunciation patterns of the standard. The vowel shift can be summarized as a process which led to long vowel sounds being raised and diphthongized. In 1476, during this period, William Caxton introduced a printing press to England. As books became more affordable, literacy rates increased. As a result, the modern became standardized with the aid of the printing press. The dialect of London, where most publishing houses were located, became the standard. Spelling and grammar became fixed, and the first English dictionary was published in year 1604. The expansion of British Empire impacted the vocabulary of English as people came in contact with languages all over the world and borrowed freely from them, especially words denoting objects and phenomena that they themselves lack words for. Examples include Tabo, which is a Polynesian language, Bungalow, Jungle and Yoga, which are Indian languages, Tea and Ketchup, which are Chinese, Boomerang, a Aboriginal languages, and Moccasin and Ska, which is a Native American language. And that wraps up, guys, our Unit 2 discussion. To continue Unit 3, this unit consists of 3 lessons. To start off the Lesson 1, the conservatism and innovation in American English. Some of the aspects of the Old English which were conserved in American English are the pronunciation of R, where it is spelled in a word. Next is the grammatical conservatism. Although some aspects of British English have been preserved, American English has lost some of them. Examples include fortnight, cops, and health. On the other hand, some examples of American English innovation are compounds of English, adaptation of English words to new uses, and American English may mean any small stream, and adaptations of foreign words like canyon and mesa. Moving on to the Lesson 2, American and British English. There are differences between British and American English in word choice, syntax, morphology, purism, dictionaries, pronunciation, and spelling. So these differences distinguish how unique and how complex the two languages are. For the Lesson 3, variation within national varieties. So the main regional dialects in America here are the Northern, North Midland, South Midland, and Southern areas. Some examples of American ethnic and social dialects include Spanish influence, Pennsylvania Dutch, Jewish, Scandinavian, Cajun, and Scotch Irish. Historical events such as the Viking influence in the Northern and East Midland, and the rise of London as a metropolitan centre of England influenced the present-day diversity within British English. Next is the Unit 4. The Unit 4 consists of 2 lessons. The first lesson is Irish English. Irish is closely related to British and American English, as the immigration or transportation of large numbers of Irishmen and women to the British colonies and America has had influence on other varieties of English worldwide. The influence of Irish English on the Newfoundland and the Caribbean, for example, is remarkable. Moreover, most of the common elements of Australian and American English may be due to a shared influence from Ireland. The 2 linguistic elements that distinguish Irish English from other varieties are pronunciation and grammar. For Irish English, pronunciation is the old-fashioned pronunciation of words like tea, meat, easy, cheat, and Jesus, with the vowel of E as in say and mate. On the other hand, in their grammar, the use of do and be indicates a habitual action like he does work, he is working, and he does be working. Moving on to the lesson 2, the Nigerian English. The English language in Nigeria is a second language. The British slave trade and the colonization of west coast of Africa led to the spread of English in southern Nigeria. Slave trade activities also resulted in the emergence of English Pidgin. The amalgamation of Nigeria in 1914 forced the North to accept the superiority of the white man, together with the English language as its symbol. Phonology, syntax, lexis, collocations, idioms, discourse and style, code mixing and code switching, and the lack of homogeneity distinguish Nigerian English from American English. Moving on to the Unit 5, this consists of 3 lessons. The first lesson is that what is a global language? So according to Crystal, a global language is something that is attained when language assumes a special role that is recognized in every nation. Additionally, he asserts that there are primarily 2 ways for a language to become a global language. The first is through official declaration, whereby a language is selected to be used as a first language or a second language in a specific nation. Receiving priority in schooling is a second way to obtain the position, though. Language will be taught in schools as a required topic for kids or even for adults who need it, even when it is not an official language. The power of its people is a fundamental component that determines a language as global or international. According to Crystal, power comprises military, political, and economic power. Furthermore, with everything I have internalized about the subject from Unit 1 to Unit 5, I have learned that the status of the present-day English was mainly influenced by the expansion of British colonial power through colonization and the emergence of the United States as a leading economic power. Next is the Lesson 2, why English is a global language. So here guys, English is a global language that is used as an official or semi-official languages in over 60 countries. And it has prominent place in a further of 20. It is either dominant or well established in all 6 continents. More so, it is the main language of books, newspapers, airports, and air traffic control. And even in international business and academic conferences, science, technology, medicine, diplomacy, and sports, English are well established. Hence, we can conclude that indeed English is a global language as it has a special role that is recognized in every nation. Moreover, one of the negative impacts of English is that it is recognized as one of the main factors which cause the turbulence of many traditional cultures. So even if English has a good effect to the people, it also had its negative impacts. For instance, Zhou Nga, a great author, confirmed that the Vietnamese ideology was once strongly influenced by Chinese philosophical traditions, with notions of obedience, politeness, and knowledge built up under Confucian systems. Currently, students' direct ways of approaching and dealing with issues may appear to be an insult to the old generation. Other than that, the author added that another disadvantage is that English also promotes unfair competitions. People are not examined with their real ability but degrees in English. So it is, even if English really has its good side, it is inevitable to also have its negative side. It's a matter of how we deal with it and how we use English in communication in moderation. For the last lesson, the future of global English. According to Crystal again, the major impediments to English future growth are rejection, contrasting ideas, and the emergence of new Englishes. This implies that people in a country may feel so antagonistic about English to the extent that they reject to consider English as either as an official language or as a foreign language. This conveys that the need for intelligibility and the need for identity often pull people and countries in opposing directions. One demands the learning of an international language, with English as the first choice in most cases. The other motivates the promotion of ethnic language and also its culture. Possible solutions to such conflicts are the promotion of bilingual or multilingual policies. And in regards to the contrasting idea, I have inculcated in the first lesson that power and language is its relationship. On top of that, the emergence of the power and language has its relationship. Moreover, the emergence of new Englishes might result in abundant lexical creation and linguistic mutation. And that wraps up our Unit 5 discussion. Up, guys, on our discussion. Thank you for sticking to me up to the end. So, as Unit is nagbago yung background ko, and even my shirt and even my face because I moved to shoot something. So, thank you very much. Anyway, I hope to see you in the next one, another informative video in our channel. So, thank you very much, and I hope it helps you as much as it helps me to review my everything that I have been knowing of. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the next one. And I am wishing the best for all the college students, especially me, that may be able to go through it all despite the challenges that is on our way. Anyway, kumbati lang gid guys, laban, normalize. God bless!